What's up, guys? Specstar here today with my Week 5 battle of Mega Beedrill. This week going up against my man Ice Demon Gray and his team consisting of Jolteon, Superior, Swampert, Starmie, Tapu Lele, and Celesteela. By the way, Jolteon for the 4 or whatever points it costs these days is a steal. Still offers a valid niche even without the hidden power, and you can still hit things with Shadow Ball. But yeah, I had to get that off my chest, and alas, here we have my team. Starting off, I've got a Life Orb Tornadus. The ability to mix up moves is crucial with Celesteela being there, particularly with me suspecting that it very well could be Assault Vest, which is in large part why I have the knockoff. It also helps accurately hit things like Starmie, as well as U-Turn. It can be quite nice actually just to get little bits of damage off with the U-Turn to try to get things in range of Hurricane. Ultimately, when I was planning this team up, I was definitely looking at Tornadus to be my win con. And I do have the speed for Starmie, of course. Next up here, I've got my Zygarde. Bandit had a pretty nice matchup, and I also really liked having the extreme speed in the background, particularly with things like Hawlucha and Charizard X. It was a good contingency plan. The bulk allowed it to come in on things like Hawlucha if I had to, and it did want to have as many options to do that as possible. Aside from that, the move pool is pretty standard, but I do have Scale Shot as the last move because it is nice to have a dragon move I don't have to lock into, particularly with the Lele sitting there, and Lele being one of the kill leaders in the league. And it also, potentially late game, if I do get rid of the Lele early, maybe it could clean. So that's my Zygarde. Speaking of things that clean, next here I have my Terrakion running a Scarf set. Pretty standard. Mega Horn, Rock Slide. Rock Slide just the accurate move to click, and Mega Horn helps me do the extra damage, which can be important, particularly for Starmie, but a little bit for Superior too. This set, and on top of cleaning late game, it also helps me if his Charizard gets off a Flame Charge or Dragon Dance, I'm able to revenge kill it. I do have the speed for the Charizard. Next up here, I've got my Milotic. And I'm actually running a minimum speed Milotic here. And the reason I'm doing that is because I expected a Leech Seed Celesteela, as I didn't have a great way to sponge that. This would have let me come in on Steela and be slower than it, so he couldn't spam Leech Seed. I would be able to get a slow flip turn off to help me deal with the seeds. I also have Recover, Toxic, and Hydro Pump. Hydro Pump can help potentially breaking that thing's substitutes. It can help breaking Charizard with some bulk substitutes. The extra damage kind of, in a few scenarios, could save my ass from some dangerous threats. And then just physically defensive lefties. Next up here, I've got Bronzong. Especially defensive set, needed to get up rocks, needed some semblance of a Tapu Lele switch in, and that is precisely what Bronzong does. I have rocks, Toxic, Gyro Ball all standard, and then I have Shadow Ball, which lets me hit Starmie a little bit, which I kind of have to do with this thing. I don't respond to Starmie too great, and giving this thing the ability to at least hit it a little bit helps with that. Particularly, it wouldn't just be able to continue recovering off with the 20% special defense drop. And of course the Toxic, but that doesn't last with Natty Cure. And lastly here, we got a Hitmontop with a Rocky Helmet. This was largely for the Charizard that didn't wind up coming. It was kind of my best bet to come in, do the Rocky Helmet, the Intimidate, Flare Blitz, Recoil, just try to get the thing in range. I do have the Earthquake to hit it, and Axle, which hits it when it's not Mega'd, and basically a lot of the things that Earthquake doesn't hit about as well as I could. Spin, of course, just a great move to have. And let's go back to the replay. Alright, so starting this off, he leads off with Swampert, and I actually led off with Bronzong. I couldn't I really couldn't let him have an advantageous lead with Starmie or Tapu Lele because that could be too costly. It also helped against Swampert, and it would have been able to minimum set up rocks against pretty much anything. So it's pretty good all around as my lead here. On the first turn, I thought he could set up his rocks, so I thought I would just go for my Toxic first to get that in before he switches out. So I will go for my Toxic. Wearing this thing down opens up some doors for things like Zygarde and Terrakion later. Particularly with the way the matchup looks and with Jolteon coming, setting up his team in range of Terrakion will be very important for me. In the following turn, I will just set up my rocks here. He brings in Jolteon, and I'm actually going to switch into Zygarde, because I thought there's where he would click an electric move. Particularly Volt Switch was a high possibility, but it did also work for the Shadow Ball here. And that is not very offensive. So what that damage tells me is he has a little bit of special attack, and this is probably intended as a switch in for Tornadus. So that's an important mental note for me, that I suspect this to be the initial response to Tornadus. And here, I'm just going to go for my 1,000 arrows, no reason not to. Laptop crash, but he goes Purd here, which is to a KO'd by arrows, so I'm just free to go for another one. He goes into Superior, which is just barely able to take it. I'm going to switch out into my Bronzong as he actually heals up, so that thing will be important to get out of the way to really open Zygarde up. He goes into a Steela here as I just go for a Gyro Ball, trying to get some damage off, which I will not get to do. I go to my Milotic, trying to get off my slow flip turn as I have minimum speed. But here I'm actually going to see that he is negative speed nature, so me going min speed to get the slow turn will ultimately be for nothing here, as I will have to turn first, and that's quite inconvenient. My idea here was actually to go into Hitmontop because I thought he was going to spam Leech Seeds, and I wanted to be able to spin the seeds and his rocks away at the same time. But he actually goes for Metal Sound, and I know I don't appreciate or maybe even take an Air Slash from here. So I'm just going to have to switch out into Zygarde and try to put some pressure on him right away. He goes for Metal Sound, and here I just got to attack this thing. I don't know if I live an Air Slash, but I need to get damage off on this thing. He goes for Air Slash. I actually do take it with a Plum. And more importantly, I get off crucial damage on Celesteela, which is just really hard for me to break with his seeds. And his set was pretty innovative to kind of limit my options of being able to respond to it. I just go for another arrows, of course. He brings in the Superior. And I'm actually convinced here that he's going to Synthesis for sure, so I'm actually going to go to Torn, even with the risk of a potential Glare. And here I believe I'm actually just going to U-turn because I expect the Jolteon to come in. And he goes into Swampert. And I will go for the U-turn. And I'm going to regen all that health back, fortunately. Here I have to go into a Zygarde because I don't want to... There isn't an easier way for me to just be able to kill this without letting him switch out for free. So I'm going to go into my Zygarde. I can't even imagine that he would risk Lele here. So I'm just going to go for a Scale Shot, which will allow me to hit Superior if he does decide to go into that and save the Swampert. And more importantly, it just kills the Swampert if he stays in. So I go for my Scale Shot here. Will to KO the thing. First Scale Shot KO I've ever seen. I don't know about you guys. He brings in the Lele here, and of course I'm going to have to switch out into my Bronzong. He goes for Shadow Ball, he gets some damage off, and I don't want to let Steela in for free, so I'm actually going to pull a switch here into my Milotic, which covered... I kind of chickened out a bit. I really wanted to go into Tornadus there, but I'm like, what if he isn't Scarf, or what if he goes for... Even if he just goes for another Shadow Ball, that'd be pretty annoying for getting my Tornadus weakened. So I just kind of chickened out and went into my Milotic, which would have taken another Shadow Ball, or it would have been okay if he went into Steela. This thing comes in, I'm going to go for my Hydro Pump, and that thing, I believe, is especially defensive as fuck. I'm pretty sure there. I just go for my Hydro Pumps, trying to take the thing out, but he's able to seed me as one of the Hydro Pumps misses. Unfortunate, but it happens. So I'm going to have to flip turn out, because I cannot let this thing heal back up. I have to go into Hitmontop, because if he does spam seeds, I'm at least able to spin them away. Can't let him have that recovery under any circumstances. He goes for Air Slash and takes a ton out of my top. He goes into Starmie as I go for my spin here. This thing's pretty much gone, but at least I get to get the rocks away. He takes me out, and I'm going to go into Torn here. He should be in range of knockoff, so I believe that's what I click there. I do click the knockoff there, and this thing, I'm just going to click my Heat Wave and get the kill on it. Fortunately, it lands. He brings in the Jolteon here. That definitely forces me out. I'm just going to go into my Bronzong, which should take any of the electric move. And I still want to save Zygarde here because it could still potentially have value with extreme speed. Bronzong doesn't have as much value with the health, in my opinion, at this point. Although it's still a little nice. It's also passive against Starmie. Speaking of Starmie, it comes in as I just click my Toxic since nothing stops that anymore. I went for my rocks here because I just wanted to keep my rocks up and I knew there was the potential for him to spin there. He goes for Hydro, he'll be able to take me out there. But he is the least weakened and the rocks are up. I'm free to click my knockoff again here. This time it takes out the Starmie. And he brings in Jolteon, which of course is going to force me out. I go into Zygarde in case he went for an electric move, which he does. Another laptop crash, but I'm just going to click extreme speed here. He could go to Lele, but he has to risk arrows, and I think it is worth it just to make sure this thing's always in range of anything Terrakion can click. I do get the E-Speed off here as he goes for the Shadow Ball to pick it off. Now I go into my Terrakion here, and I'm just going to click Mega Horn because it basically covers everything, and it's more accurate than Stone Edge, so I'll click Mega Horn. He does go into Superior, so the Mega Horn will pay off here and be able to pick that thing off. He goes into Lele now, and I am just going to switch into my Milotic, just mostly sacking it off. I want to be able to bring Torn in on this thing. I bring in my Torn and I just want to click Knockoff because Knockoff gets in range of all of Terrakion's attacks, and if it is Scarf as we see here, it will position Torn to be able to just pick it off the following turn with Heat Wave. And the Heat Wave goes off there and takes that out. All that's left now is Jolteon, and we'll be able to take out my Tornadus, but I'm going to be able to come into my Terrakion here and pick it off with close combat. And that'll be the game here. Laptop crashed again, but as I was saying, GG to the opponent. That being our third win in the row will actually bump us up to 4-1 at midpoint in the season. So fortunate run after the loss to Bill. We've been able to right the ship for the most part, but we gotta keep going. Can't ease off the brakes now. And since it's mid-season, I'll read off some of the stats in my Pokemon. Roserade is leading the team in kills with 7 and 2 deaths. Gardevoir and Tornadus both have 6 kills and 3 deaths. Terrakion has 5 kills and 2 deaths. And then Milotic, Zoroark, Bronzong, and Zygarde all have 1 kill. And then Hitmontop, Beheeyem, and poor old Luxray, which hasn't come yet, have 0. And the interesting thing is, most of the teams doing almost none of the killing. And then I have 4 Pokemon which are on pace to all have at least 10 kills each, which is almost impossible when you consider that throughout the whole season, the average team will have about 48, 49 kills. And for 4 to have 40 of them would be absolutely insane if that pace kept up. But, you know what, it's interesting, it's something to watch, so I'll see what happens there. And I hope you guys enjoyed watching this. I want to thank you guys for watching, and have yourselves a good night.